Hello, Jack. You are up next.
Hey, Bart, can you hear me?
I can, and I recognize that Jack's got a nice little Pat Patriot avatar, and I think this is from Encore Boston Harbor, right? Is that right?
Correct.
You've called
Yep.
in before? I think I've seen that avatar
I
before.
have.
Yeah.
I have.
All right. So what's the size of this game here you were playing in?
Yeah, so this is the 2-5 at Encore.
All right. So 2-5, obviously a game that I've played many, many times. I'll probably be there tomorrow. 2-5. It's a 1K cap.
Yeah, I haven't seen you there, but I usually go like random nights and
I
I'm not
play
usually
during the
there
day
during the day. I
usually.
know. Yeah. So yeah, I think table was full, so it was 9-handed. Straddle was kind of like on and off, but I think it was off for this hand. So 2-5 9-handed, folds to me. I'm in middle position, MP1. I raised to 20 with Queen of Clubs, Queen of Hearts.
Okay.
Folds around to the villain in the small blind. He clicks it up to $65.
And you started at about did you start at 1,000 effective?
Oh yeah, sorry. So it's actually 1,700 effective.
Oh, okay.
And
So you're deep.
I'm
Okay.
the effective stack. And yeah, the villain I think had like a little over 2K,
All right. So you
which kind of comes into a little bit of this.
So you open from MP1 to 20 with queens, small blind 3-bets to 65, a little bit small, no straddle, just 2 blinds. Okay.
Yeah. And this kind of came to the first decision point where I don't know why, but I figured sort of with how the stack sizes were here, and I've seen this guy play for like a couple hours now, and he seemed like a pretty competent player. I ended up just calling here in position.
I mean, I don't think that that's bad. I think queens are probably maybe even called more than 4-bet here. I mean, you open from MP1, small blind 3-bets. There's no straddle, so it's kind of a tighter configuration here. I mean, you're always just going to put it in the 4-bet with like aces and usually with kings. And again, we talk about like ace king suited, but I don't mind just calling here. Obviously, if you had some sort of dead call in between, like if it went 20 and then like cutoff called, you'd always want a 4-bet. But okay, so hero calls, and the pot's like 130. Okay.
Yeah, I had the pot. Yeah, right around 130. Flop comes out 9 of clubs, 9 of diamonds, 5 of clubs.
9 of clubs, 9 of diamonds, 5 of clubs. Okay.
Yep. Villain checks.
Okay.
And I bet 60.
So Mark Goon, one of our content creators, Squish My Tomato, he's doing that $100 an hour challenge at 5-5. I know that one of his things that he's definitely advocated for a lot as kind of one of his live exploits is sometimes checking range in a 3-bet pot from out of position in a given situation. I don't know if this guy looks like a guy that might watch Mark Goon videos or what, but doesn't nowadays, I guess, but my point is, doesn't always mean when someone checks, they don't have anything, right, in a given spot. You would think this board, though, in theory, would be bet a whole bunch from the 3-better, just because you guys aren't going to have a ton of like both like 9x all that much, and he continues to have probably like the range advantage with like more overpairs. So theoretically, yeah, I mean, I would bet for sure. I might take even a little bit of larger sizing. I might go 80 here because I don't even think ace king, for some reason, is going to check fold.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Yes.
And he does call.
So you go 60 and the small blind calls. Okay.
Yep.
So
now
the pot is 250.
Yep. And the turn is 7 of hearts.
All right. So the turn's a 7 of hearts. It's 9 of clubs, 9 of diamonds, 5 of clubs, front door flush draw out there. Small blind who 3-bet preflop checks, hero bet 60 with queens. Small blind calls, pot's 250. Turns the 7 of hearts, 9957. Okay.
So now he checks again. And so, I mean, when he checks again here on this turn, I felt like I was going to be going for 3 streets at this point.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it would be surprising for a guy to play king or ace so defensively here. And, you can bet here again and then sometimes, take a showdown if you don't like the card on the river, right? But if you check it back, I don't know if that really accomplishes like a whole lot besides giving away a free card and then maybe even missing some value here on the turn.
Yeah, fair enough. So I decide the sizing here at 165.
Okay. I was going to say 150 to 175, maybe something like that. So hero bet's 165. Okay.
And not too much thought, he calls.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You could still see some ace king here, like kind of bluff catching you. But then the question is like, will ace king call at the end, depending on what the river is? 165 and a call. So you put 330 in on the turn. Now the pot is $580, right? 330, $580. It's 9957. I mean, if I get like a low card here that's not like a club, right? Really you want like a deuce or a three here. I mean, that would be probably like the best case scenario. Would anybody ever play ace five suited this way? I was thinking like maybe you want a five here too, or a nine, obviously. I mean, that's kind of the same. The only thing with a five is maybe a guy like sometimes plays ace five suited this way, or although like a five needs a little bit of, protection. What you don't want to see, you don't want to like see like a six or an eight or like a king or an ace, right? Or maybe even to a lesser extent, a 10 or a jack, right? I mean, at that point, so, you're kind of hoping for like a low blank here at the end.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get kind of in between of that. So the river is the four of clubs.
I think that's four of clubs. So, so it brings in the front door flush draw.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got the queens with the queen of clubs.
Correct. Yep.
And so how often does this guy have a flush draw? Now, that makes a flush, right? Now, you might find some guys certainly will, if they three bet with like ace king of clubs, ace jack of clubs, they might do some check call. They actually might play the hand this way, right? They might actually play the hand this way. The interesting part of this, and I don't know what's going to happen on the river though, is that if guy has some of those hands, right? Like the nut flush draw where he feels like it's better to just like check call. He has to have some leads though on the river too. Maybe not always, but if he checks the river, then I think that it will at least reduce the possibility that he has all of those flushes just by merely him checking the river. If some of those hands are supposed to lead at the end.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
So he checks?
That's why, he checks.
Okay.
And so then it's like, this was where it was sort of a weird spot. Just in terms of like, because I want, I thought about this for a little bit before deciding what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Almost checked back, but I decided.
I mean, so obviously if it's an offsuit four, you're just slam dunk value betting, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So here it's very close, right? Because of the clubs. So you're on board with me thinking that he might have some nut flush draws that are check calling, right?
Yeah,
to the end.
For sure.
Yeah, like an ace 10 of clubs, ace jack of clubs, something like that. Well, it's interesting because you've got the queen of clubs, and if he only plays those flush draws that are not flush draws this way, then it really only blocks one of the combos, right? Which is like ace queen of clubs. Meaning like he's not going to have like queen jack of clubs, king queen of clubs, queen 10 of clubs. Those are going to get bet off quite a bit on the flop, right? If he three bet those. So it doesn't really block those. So it's not like, oh, queens with a club, slam dunk bet. It doesn't, if we're saying that the only flush draws that he's checking are not flush draws. The other thing too that you have to take into consideration here, Jack, is that if he was calling you down with ace king no clubs, like he just decided, or some sort of ace highs with no clubs, or some sort of like hand that he decided to play in a certain way that was a bluff catcher, ace five, pocket eights, pocket sixes, something like that. And if it was eight sixes, he picks up like a gut shot on the turn. The issue is that he's like, okay, well, I'm going to check call this guy. He's got like clubs here, right? Well, now the clubs come in. So then at that point, some of those hands that have like sort of slivers of showdown value that he might have decided to bluff catch you with across three streets, now some of those have to fold off because the club came in. So it's worse for him to bluff catch you with some of those like weaker portions of his hands. So I would say, yeah, it's pretty close. I think it's pretty close because if he's not calling you with like a red ace king, red ace queen, then you're kind of targeting like tens or jacks. I mean, I don't think if you decide to bet, it probably shouldn't be huge sizing.
Well, and that's what I was like.
Yeah.
When I decided to make the bet that I did here, that's like, I'm thinking in my head, like, all right, I'm targeting here jacks, tens, and maybe even someone who's like, cry calling with eights if he's three betting there in the small blind with eights. But that's sort of what I was thinking. And then, the hands that I lose to, right, that he check calls with, kings, aces, and then maybe, he's like playing jack 10 of clubs like this. But I would think he wouldn't be playing jack 10 of clubs like this. I feel like I would hear about that like on the turn, possibly, as he's got the gut shot and the flush draw.
9957, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but either way, so I decided at 200 was the bet.
So hero bets 200. And again, like, this is a situation, if you were with me for with me for this live stream on September 16th, I had said the last call that we took live was a very sort of strange hand where it ran out like 4 to a straight flush. And I said, in this case, you might actually have to be worried about getting blown off your equity in that particular situation. This is a more normal situation where I don't really feel like have to like take into consideration all that much that a guy might check raise bluff the river here with like ace king with the ace of clubs, you know what I mean, or something, and blow me off my equity. Because if you're up against an opponent that's capable of check raise bluffing here, then you can get blown off your equity. Now, if he's got the nut flush and then you played it this way, I'm trying to think about how often somebody, I mean, I guess there's not that many. I mean, you got both. I mean, there's pocket sevens, pocket fives, pocket fours, but it's not like the board's like 9-9-8-7 or like 9-9-10-8 where there's some two pair combos that you could have that are both. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I assume that he's probably allowed to check raise the river with nut flushes. So when you put that into consideration, then it actually makes sense that he could actually take the ace of clubs and turn it into a bluff. I'm all for thin value in situations like this where that consideration of getting blown off my equity is rather minimal at this level. So it doesn't come into my thought process all that much unless I know that the player is capable of it. If the player's tricky, you might consider checking back here. But okay, so
right.
You bet 200, yeah.
Yeah, and there isn't actually any crazy dramatized ending here. He thinks about it a little bit, makes the call, and he flips over ace. And he had the ace of clubs too. I think just the part of this hand that was interesting, I thought, was that river decision. And then, what would have been interesting as well is if pre-flop, obviously, if I had 4-bet, he probably would have been interesting to see what he would have done there too. If he just comes immediately over the top, or if he tries to be cagey, but he flips over ace of clubs, ace of hearts, and I value on myself.
Maybe this guy does watch some Mark Goon stuff. Now, my whole thing about checking a lot in spots like this, and aces with the ace of clubs is probably one of the, I would say, the best overpair combo, because he doesn't need any protection. He's got the ace of clubs in his hand too. The only issue that I have with this line from him, though, it's a decent line against a good player. They can value own themselves, right? They can value own themselves and also try to get you off of a hand. But how many good players are you running into at 2-5? That's the only, in this game. And believe me, there's not many good players in this game because I put a lot of hours into it. So when you sort of look at that setup, the problem with this line against most of that player pool is that like you're like the only guy that's going to take like queen here for 3 streets. And can you imagine if like a guy got scared and check back turn, and then like maybe he like gets like a little river value at the end, or he plays it this way. You bet 60 on the flop, you bet 165 on the turn, and then you just check back the river. What a fucking disaster, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Of course, Bart. Go Pats.
Oh,
See you
all
later.
right.